Welcome everybody to episode 6 of the Office Freedom Podcast Flex with Richard Smith, and a very warm welcome to our very special guest, Ola Bradford, the Global Facilities and Property Service Manager of YouGov PLC.
Hello, hi Gavin. Thank you for inviting me. Hello.
Hi, nice to see you in person.
Very nice, very different.
Now, YouGov are the most quoted research and data analytics source in the UK, and the global press regularly reference their polls, marketing and opinion data. Everyone has heard of YouGov because, quite simply, they are everywhere. But just to give you a flavour of the business, it was founded in 2000. They now have a market cap of over 1.1 billion and are headquartered in the City of London. They have 1,100 employees in 23 countries in 40 global markets with 11 million registered members, 3,300 clients, and last but not least, which I know is of great interest to you, Richard, YouGov have 37 global offices.
Hi, Ola. Welcome to my podcast. It's a real pleasure to see you face to face. We've had a few Zooms and loads of calls, but it's very nice to have you here as a guest on my podcast.
And Ola, I see you have an impressive background with almost 15 years in property, service project management, facilities management, and a master's in law and administration from Gdansk University. At YouGov, I understand you're responsible for facilities and property services globally, including health, safety, and maintenance. And Richard, please pay attention to this bit: office renewals and relocations. And you're leading the Return to the Office working group. This all sounds very interesting. Ola, what can you tell us about all of that?
Thank you very much for the introduction. Nice to meet you. Nice to see you in person. Yeah. It is indeed quite welcome change from all the last 12 months sitting on Zoom. What can I tell you about my experience? Well, yes, last 15 years I've been managing offices and property services for dynamically growing fast international companies. 15 years, about 300,000 square feet, 40 different countries, over 25 successfully delivered office relocations. Indeed, it was very busy.
So this comes as nothing new to you then, more office relocations?
More office. I love more office relocations. It's something that I really enjoy. It's been definitely very different. I am a very hands-on facilities manager. Last couple of relocations have been over Zoom mostly, which is very different to the previous experience, but nevertheless still interesting.
I like office relocations too.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah, and we worked on a few together. And I think it's interesting that you joined YouGov in around March 2020, which was obviously a life-changing moment for you, but it was another life-changing moment happened for you and the rest of us around the same time, obviously with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, which must have been a very difficult and challenging time for you. And it's my understanding that within a couple of weeks of starting your new role, you had to arrange the closing of all your 37 offices.
Correct.
How did that go down?
God, that must have been a challenging task.
Indeed. Well, very challenging, but very, very interesting. I joined YouGov on 2nd of March. 2 weeks in, we had a hard stop due to pandemic. A hard stop in terms of facilities being, all the offices globally being closed. And to be honest, I think that gave me a really good opportunity to get to know everyone globally much faster than I would have done it in normal circumstances.
Yes.
Within a couple of weeks from actually shutting down all the offices, we've established Return to Office working group. And we started working on plans to reopening the offices. There's been hours and hours of very dynamic discussions of what is going to happen, how we are going to reopen the office.
But tell me, how did you go about closing the offices? Obviously, you had to do it all via Zoom. So did you start in?
We obviously have a global communications managers and teams that was we've set up crisis response teams.
Yes.
Or not set up, but sort of
Have them in place.
right time. So there was a global communication. We've closely monitored local infection rates and how the pandemic locally in different countries have been evolving, and we've been communicating and speaking to individual country directors as we have been progressing with closing and reopening the offices. So it wasn't me who jumped on Zooms with every single country director or every single representative from local entities. It was done from our group level.
So there's a huge amount of logistics that must be involved into shutting down an office. How does it work in terms of the chain of command? Where do the directives come from? And where do you take responsibility for that? Is it specific to each country?
So we've got a global executive team, which consists of our CEO, CFO, and COO, and then we've worked on with senior management. There was a return to office working group that we've established. I would say logistically, closing down the offices wasn't as challenging as actually reopening them.
Yeah. And you say that the return to office task force, that was instigated very quickly or only recently or soon after the closing?
Soon it was instigated really in the beginning of pandemic.
The plan to get back?
Yes. Within a couple of weeks, we the crisis response team got together and we knew that we need to plan for reopenings.
And does every individual country have a different plan for reopening, I would assume, based upon their rate of infection?
We've got a global plan that I lead the return to office working group, and we've established plans, we've established policies, we've established anything from supporting our staff with mental well-being when working from home to actually putting very detailed plans in place for reopening each locations.
Are they actually back now, or is that phased approach, or what's the situation?
We've got a phased approach into reopening each location based on the current situation in country. Yeah.
I mean, whilst we're on the subject of COVID, and obviously we have recently transacted on your behalf in India, it's obviously a very, very serious situation there at the moment. So how are you handling your Indian operations?
Definitely in line with local regulations and restrictions. At the moment, offices in India are closed, and we are waiting for any changes that can allow us to change it. Actually, I've had a call with our Indian team. I speak to them bi-weekly, and we had a call this morning. And I think it's good to say that YouGov YouGov is going to sponsor vaccinations for our staff in India. In order to have them to make sure that they're well and protected.
That's really good. I mean, I'm not an expert in the geography of all of India, but in terms of where YouGov's offices are they in areas where the COVID is particularly more serious in that part of the country than other parts of the country?
Well, we are in Mumbai and Bangalore. Definitely one of the worst affected parts of India. But I think that current situation is across India.
The whole of India. Well, it's a great shame, and we hope that they, get into a better place as quickly as possible. So you've been in FM around 15 years of your career, and I think it's fair to say that during that period, it hasn't always been as rosy as one would like, and you have unfortunately experienced some level of bias or discrimination against women, and obviously right now it's a complete breath of fresh air at YouGov, which is the complete opposite to that, which is amazing. But tell us about the earlier experiences and how that affected you.
It definitely made me stronger.
Yeah.
There are examples of experience, anything from going to an interview and hearing that, I actually expected a man in a hard hat here. Yeah. And to working on construction projects, relocation projects where teams of internal, external teams of, let's say, construction companies
Yes.
would be saying, but how do you know that? How do you know where the floor boxes should be placed? So, it's I know because I learn on the job. I've learned my trade on the job in most cases. About 3-5 years in, I've realized that this is what I want to do. This is what I really enjoy doing.
Yeah.
And I spent a vast amount of hours to learn everything that I needed to know. Luckily enough, I worked with some fast-growing companies that required a lot of relocations and construction projects, that I was able to gain international experience and exposure to the market, and that just made me who I am at the moment and where I am at the moment.
So, Ola, the culture at YouGov is to offer equal opportunity to all, diversity in all forms, and it's celebrated. Can you tell us about YouGov's D&I task force?
Sure. So it is something that we're trying to concentrate on this year. I can't tell you a lot about it just yet, as this is still work in progress. But I think it's worth mentioning that this year we have added, or maybe it was last year actually, we've added a fifth value to our four existing one, and it's the value. It's a respect, and it just really shows how we want internally and externally to be seen internally by our staff, and how we respect our staff, and externally working with our stakeholders and clients.
Yeah, it must be interesting with these values, because if they're so strong internally, that must be fantastic for all the team when they're actually dealing with clients, because they carry that through. And
absolutely, this is very visible in everything we do. We've created a number of different channels internally. We've got champions who facilitate conversations. I'm co-chairing abilities network, where we are going to, this is still again work in progress, but we are trying to focus on different abilities, disabilities, and really open up the conversations with staff internally, with people who might not be confident enough to come forward.
So you're really creating an all-inclusive culture,
absolutely,
amongst the team, which will then absolutely, as you said, Richard, just breed out to clients.
And in terms of all-inclusive, I noticed that at YouGov, the gender pay gap has reduced for the third year in a row, which is great. And I'm sure that's a lot to do with the fact that there's more women in the company throughout levels, but also at senior levels. And you're a big part of that, which is amazing.
Absolutely. We have about 5 or 6 senior managers who are women, and that shows, that is really visible in everything that we do.
Yeah. From my perspective, I've always thought that in terms of roles that you allocate to people within the company, to me, it hasn't really mattered at all what sex they are. It's more who is best suited for the role. So if it was all women or all men, to me, it's like, isn't it best that actually you have the right person for the role, as opposed to necessarily one sex or another? I just think that for me as an employer, I would happily have either all of one or all of the other, because the skill sets that I interview in a candidate may all be women. So fine, I'll have no problem with all women in the company. But actually, one of the other factors that is prevalent here is to make sure that it's also, as shared and 50-50 as possible. But that might not always be the best for the actual company.
I think you should
what do you think?
Definitely look at the experience of the person. What do they bring in?
Yes.
And that's the end of conversation that way, whether this is a female or male, or a man or woman, any other genders, it's fine. This should not matter.
The pricing model of flexible workspace, we've discussed this a few times, haven't we, Ola? The serviced office or the flexible office world tend to price space as a desk rate, X pounds or X dollars per person per month or per desk per month. You feel, and I tend to agree with you, that that can be a bit misleading, and it would probably be better to have a per square foot or per square meter pricing model. What are your thoughts on that?
Definitely. I think I'm still waiting for this big change in the industry. I think at some point in the last few years, we've seen a rise of managed offices that sort of supported this different pricing model. But the big players, they're still quoting per desk, and especially now with social distancing requirement in place, it's counterintuitive. That's what I feel.
Yeah, I agree, but I understand why it's not so prevalent, because the problem with quoting a per square foot rate in a serviced office is that everybody gets out their calculator and then they work out how many square feet there are, and then they say, wow, that per square foot rate of £100-200 a square foot is absolutely extortionate when you compare it to the rental per square foot.
But we also know that within that price, however you price it, we know what we are getting. As a facilities manager who's renting out spaces, I understand if I pay £30 per square foot, and it's a standard leased office, I'm going to have to add additional 50 to be able to cover everything else. I think the challenge in the last 12 months was that with social distancing, I'm still being told that I need to pay for 100 people, else I know I can only fit 50.
Yes.
And that's fine, as long as we all are on the same understanding.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, Richard, how does that work? And let's say Ola's taken an office, she had 100 people in there, and then all of a sudden the company decides that they only can have 50 in there. Can they then renegotiate for only paying for 50 people, or they're still paying for the 100 but they can only fit 50 in?
Richard is saying he can negotiate everything, so that's why we're sitting here.
That's why he's so good.
Yeah, I tend to. I have had a couple of good moments in my negotiating career. However, in this scenario, when I've spoken to the operators, asking them to halve the rate based on the fact that the end user, the occupier, can only have half the amount of space in there, isn't going to fly. So the rate will not change. It's something that is a bit of an issue, and COVID has created that question mark. But in some of your offices, you have some alternative shifts, don't you?
We've got shifts. We do have programming in place, especially for COVID, and we know that when we are taking an office, it's not going to be 12 months, and we're hoping that we're going to stay in that space for additional 2-3 years, depending on the growth. But I think there is another challenging fact, is that the desks in flexible offices are usually very small, and being quoted by square foot, I can then better understand how many desks of my preferred size I can put in the space. Whilst when I'm being quoted for 100 people, and I know that if I bring in my desks, I will have definitely fewer.
Yes, and that's something that we negotiated for the transaction in India, wasn't it? A desk sizing that was preferable to you, and it was an example of the operator being flexible and accommodating your specific needs. But the problem over the years has been that clients do tend to work out a per square foot rate, and then they compare that to a leasehold rate, and then they literally run for the hills. Ola's different, being in FM and being so experienced in property, but your average client that is not really that property experience and is just looking for the guidance, they need a little bit of assistance in educating, because they don't realise that actually the rent per square foot is, you also need to add on, the rates, the service charge, the running cost, the electricity. There's also dilapidations at the end, and a large fit out at as you enter the space. There's also extraordinary service charge items that could occur during their stay if the lift or the roof needed replacing, and it was, I don't know, £100,000, and you got 20% of the building. You will be given an extra bill for £20,000.
And on the deals you've done for Ola, are they based upon a traditional lease, or they have been flex?
Flex. We've done 2 or 3 transactions on the flexible side, and yes, those areas are much better understood by Ola and YouGov than most clients because of Ola's background in real estate.
Yeah.
But it is a difficult challenge with many clients. For example, if you take a lease, you would budget for a certain amount of square feet, but on a flex, you could probably get away with somewhere between half to 3/4 of that space, because in the flex environment, there's a lot of communal areas that you can use, meet and greet areas, toilets, kitchen. Whereas when you lease space, you obviously need to pay rent on all of that 24/7 and encompass that in your accommodation.
Now, I would imagine, Ola, that being environmentally friendly to a company such as YouGov is quite important. Richard, why don't you perhaps lead in with Super?
Yes, something we discussed recently. I introduced Ola to a friend of mine, Tracy Wilson, who works at a company called Super. Now, that Super is a company that give certification to businesses for their single-use plastic elimination or reduction. Phew, wow, I got that right. The abbreviations are quite difficult. So, yes, it's all about the reduction of plastic in offices, and you get certification for that, gold, silver or bronze, and they also guide you as to how to reduce or eliminate plastic. I know it's only early days for you, Ola, but when I discussed it with you, you did like the idea of Super.
Definitely. I'm still yet to talk to Super, and I think we've got something scheduled within the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But for me personally, as well as YouGov, getting the sustainability, being environmentally friendly, reducing the waste, it's extremely important. We are trying to work with the right vendors, with the right suppliers that can support us in all those mentioned initiatives.
Yes.
We file our carbon reports every year, and that's been quite. It's showing quite a positive findings.
Yeah.
Obviously, last year reduced travel a lot, which helps. But I suppose that's everyone else.
It's amazing, really, in the running of your standard business now. There is so much to think about outside of just what you do in terms of the things we've discussed today.
Yeah.
Whether it be your corporate governance, your culture you're trying to sort of breathe through your employees, and then your sustainability. It's quite amazing.
Yeah, the plastics thing is a huge problem for the world, and even plastic bottled water. I mean, here we are drinking a bottle out of a can.
That's can of water, yeah.
Can of water is definitely a statement in the right direction. And yeah, these are issues that are so critical, but sometimes overlooked, which is not good. We need to focus on what's important.
Okay, so let's talk about how Office Freedom have interacted with YouGov. When did you first get to know Richard and Bob Tor at Office Freedom?
It was around November, wasn't it?
I think it was around November, October time when I was looking for some options. I think it was in Stockholm.
Stockholm in Sweden, yes.
And I've just run a simple Google search, came out with Office Freedom, had a brief look on the website and filled in online form. And within I think it was quite late in the evening, about 6-7 p.m. And I was quite surprised that I heard back within a few minutes from Bob.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. I don't let any of my staff go home. It's 24/7, 365.
I do have suspicions that it is.
Yeah, Bob replied pretty much straight away, yes.
Really straight away. We've had a call the day after, and that's how it started. And I was quite surprised. I was really...
But I understand that YouGov had already made inquiries directly with various serviced operators, but then you emailed them or CC'd Richard, informing them that from that moment on, Office Freedom were your representatives.
Yes. Well, I decided to, having talked to Richard a few times since the first inquiry, he challenged me saying he said to me, well, it's free.
Everybody loves that.
Let's try that.
Yeah.
Let's try that.
Yeah. It's a good opening line.
Give me this chance. Let me show you what I can do for you.
Yeah.
You just need to say to whoever you're working currently with,
And was that what made you comfortable about working with Office Freedom?
I've worked with a number of brokers in the past, with number of direct suppliers. I'm always open to finding new companies, new partners to work with, and if it's for free, I'm like, why not?
Yeah.
Let me. I was really open to see what Office Freedom can help us with.
Yeah.
Especially at YouGov, the facilities team is brand new. We've been established when I essentially joined YouGov. So last year, I worked with a wide network of office managers located in different entities. But in terms of facilities management expertise and knowledge, we currently have just a couple of facilities managers working at YouGov. So imagine having over 30, almost 40 offices, and a number of leases coming to an end or renewal. It is a time consuming. It is for me time consuming to try to find the best deal. Here comes Richard, says he can take care of it, and then asking me to trust him. It went quite well. I was really surprised.
Thank goodness.
I was really pleased. Not only usually when you work with commercial brokers, they will focus on commercial negotiations. But Office Freedom went way beyond that. They managed to look in details into building house rules for all the locations we've been discussing.
The license agreements.
And really help us to negotiate the best deals. Definitely saved me quite a good few hours on reading, quite a thick sometimes agreements.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big trust to place in someone as well, knowing they're negotiating things on your behalf. Obviously, you're very, very experienced in facilities management and locating offices, so it seems like you've
finally me.
Ticked the box and someone trusted you after 30 years.
It took me 28 years.
And that just shows that your free tenant representation model kind of works.
Yeah, I think it was the first time we had a quick Zoom straight after the first inquiry for Stockholm, and when we explained the global reach and the fact that we can help internationally, I think that's something that Ola thought could be of interest, because as she said, it's with not the largest team in the FM team to be able to outsource and to be able to have a single point of contact. That's something that you found of interest, and then you told us that you had the requirements in India and in Romania. So we got to work on that.
So far, between yourself and Bob, you've sourced for YouGov offices in Bucharest and Thane for about 150 desks combined.
Yes.
Are they working on any other deals for you?
We will work on more deals. At the moment, we are still reviewing. It's very much down to current pandemic situation, but I know Richard is my first point of contact.
He's quite good in Los Angeles, by the way, just to let you know, and Stockholm.
I think Los Angeles is very good. It's looking very good already.
Yes, we're working on a couple of options in Los Angeles. The Stockholm inquiry, which actually brought us together originally, that went on hold for a little while, but I got a feeling that's going to come back on stream later this year.
Well, hopefully we're working on this.
And how was it for you, Ola, at the end of these transactions to receive no invoice from Office Freedom?
It's great. I mean, there's no other answer to that. No, it's definitely. I was quite surprised of the quality and the volume of work that Office Freedom has put into
each transaction.
Finding the best option for us and negotiating throughout quite a few months. Right, it took us a few months because of pandemic, because of changing scenarios, and we've changed in Romania. We have changed location a couple of times.
Yes.
And Ola, in an overcrowded marketplace, and you know it well, do you think there's anything sort of unique about Office Freedom and the way they do things?
I think definitely Richard's knowledge and experience and expertise, and his connection with all the brokers operators globally.
I guess your ability to speak to owners directly to negotiate the best terms for companies is a big plus for you.
Yeah, I mean, look, over the years, I've built up relationships with the owners of all of the service providers globally. So quite often I'll step in at the last minute and just go that extra mile. And I think, that's exactly how it worked with YouGov in India and in Romania. And it's something that, I do enjoy. I was brought up to be a tenant representative agent, and in the early days of my career we would charge a fee for that service. That is the norm in the UK, to charge the client a fee for the acquisition. But what's happened over the years for Office Freedom is that we've evolved a bit similar to the US broker model, the tenant rep model, whereby in America the property agents have always represented the tenant in negotiations but always been paid by the landlord. That was never the case in the UK. It's always been the other way around. But over the years we've evolved into that. So for the end user, for the client, they do get the best of both worlds. They get someone that knows what they're doing in negotiations, and they don't get an invoice at the end of it. So yeah, it works well.
Sounds perfect to me. Ola, what do you think now in terms of where we are? The pandemic feels like it's hopefully coming to a little haltering stop, certainly in the UK. What are your hopes now for the next sort of 12 months in terms of your job going forward?
I definitely want my London office to feel busy. We have 15,000 square feet, and there's just 30 people allowed at the time out of 400 staff.
So
London.
when do you hope to get them all back in your plan?
I'm hoping that, fingers crossed, with government plan of relaxing lockdown going well, we are going to see end of June. We're going to see not the new normal, but the old normal to be back. And
that's something we discussed in the past. We all want the old normal back, not the new normal.
Yes, but I think the pandemic actually gave a really good opportunity to a lot of businesses who are not open to agile working to actually consider that, as I think people worked really hard over the last 12 months, and not necessarily being in the office, being supervised all the time. So I've worked in the different businesses over the years where working from home wasn't sometimes an option. Whilst now it's something that it prompts businesses to consider that.
And going forward, is that something that YouGov is going to be sort of actively sort of pushing for or allowing, is the flexibility of working from home and coming into the office?
We've been agile since almost the beginning of YouGov being established. So it's not something that is going to have to drastically change in a way that we work. But we are currently working on our new workplace location policies, where this flexible working will be a bit more regulated.
I think that gives an example of how forward-thinking YouGov are in terms of the fact that you were doing the agile hybrid working even before COVID. So that gives an example.
London office has only 22 desks. We've got double workforce in UK in London, and we've been agile for a very long time.
I noticed actually that in terms of your 37 offices, you have under 10% of the global offices in the UK, but over a third of your staff are in the UK. So that's obviously mainly in the head office. But you also have an office in Guildford, is that right?
We've got a small office in Guildford, yes.
Yeah, and I think going forward, in terms of your locations within the UK, is that something you plan to expand on, or do you think your 3 or 4 locations at the moment are all set?
Why do I feel like you're pitching for new offices here, Rich?
He probably does.
Just
as
the
I
mind's
said,
always working.
You'll be the first one to hear about it.
No, I appreciate that, but just wondering in terms of your global footprint, because I know that you're strong in Europe, Middle East, North America. So in general, are there any parts of the world where you feel that in the next year or two you have plans to increase your exposure, your footprint?
We are continuously growing and looking at the new markets.
In terms of going forward and the future design of offices, we've talked about accessibility or the lack of, or how it should improve. What are your thoughts on the design going forward to become more accessible to people?
Definitely would love to be the one who changes the design of how the offices are being designed currently, and hopefully the pandemic will give us the opportunity and the chance to rethink that.
What is it you want to change?
Just, at the moment we've gone from cubicle offices spaces to open plan loud spaces, loud offices, from individual offices to where everyone sits together and very collaborative spaces. I think now I'm hoping the offices will be seen more as spaces where people do come collaborate, rather than coming in for 8 hours a day and then packing up their laptop and going home. In terms of accessibility, we work at YouGov at we started working at Diversion and Inclusivity Task Force, and part of it is to actually recognize the different abilities, and one of my roles is to make sure that the offices, the spaces we come to on a daily basis, are adapted to allow people with different abilities to come and enjoy like everyone else. Take, for example, visually impaired staff, or someone with or colorblind people, not even mentioning increased accessibility for wheelchair users, or someone with walking difficulties.
Yes. In terms of what you mentioned about collaboration space, I think this is the area which is going to be critical to incorporate within offices going forward, especially now, because when we all return to the office after a year in pretty much isolation, I think a lot of people will not even realise how down or anxious or depressed they have been over a long period of time. And when they go from that one extreme to another in terms of getting back to the office, I think it's more important than ever to have areas where you can literally let your hair down, de-stress, and just enjoy the office environment. Not necessarily at your desk, all day, but being able to have those areas to enjoy. Is that something that is important going forward for you to incorporate in the offices?
Definitely creating spaces where not only people can just work with the head down, or on the other hand socialize, but just having spaces that can adapt to all sorts of different needs and the ways that people like to work. Not everyone is fan of, and especially as you said, after 12 months of working from home, not everyone will be keen to come into open plan office where there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of staff coming to you, asking questions, where there's a kitchen in the open plan where people just having coffee and just enjoying themselves whilst someone is trying to concentrate on their work or being in a meeting.
Ola, you've obviously seen a lot of office space everywhere. Is there such a thing as the best office you've ever seen?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
You're waiting to design that yourself.
I do. I quite like that part.
Because I haven't been inside offices for a very long time. In fact, for about 15 years, until I had to go and have a look at some of the spaces that Richard offers. And I was blown away with some of the things that are on offer, whether from the simplicity of a bike rack to sleep pods to
showers, gyms,
and also almost like a communal space, like a town hall area. Yeah, where people can sit and literally have conferences with their staff in quite an informal way. It was very impressive.
I think that's where the flexible serviced office world is really going to come into its own in the coming months, when people are welcomed back into the office. And I think offices that don't provide that communal breakout area will it will be challenging for the team to go back to literally come to the office from being at home, one extreme to another. They do need that middle ground and those areas to collaborate and just to unwind. And I think that is a big part of why the flexible workspace solution has become much more popular in recent years, and it will really show itself again going forward. I just also wanted to talk about the onset of, well, June is going to be the moment in the UK where all restrictions are lifted, and then it will be a moment to see how we do come back to the office, what exactly is going to happen. My personal opinion is that people have short memories, and I think that, for me personally, going back to how it was is the way forward. Yes, for certain industries like tech, or if you're a programmer or in marketing maybe, then the working from home, I understand. But in terms of the majority of my employees, for example, who are dealing with clients, and some of the team brand new and they need training and mentoring and development, I really feel quite comfortable having them in the office, and they seem happy to come into the office. I'm just trying to understand what you both think about how it's going to be going back, and is there anything wrong with going back to how it was, or do we have to have a new normal? What do you think, Ola?
I think the future will tell, really. Next few months, if everything goes well with vaccinations and staff being comfortable returning to the office, we'll see more and more staff coming back. But I think we'll see more and more employers being open to allowing staff to work from home and to work from the office. Currently, in London, for example, I'm receiving more and more weekly. I receive a great number of staff wanting to return to the office. We've got a special employee risk assessment in place where if someone wants to return to the office, they need to state that they are well, but they need to also state that they are comfortable returning to the office. There's no pressure, and then it's actually happening. People do want to return. It will take a few months. I think summertime it still will be fairly quiet. But if travel kicks off again, if we complete all the vaccinations and we are on the road to recovery, I don't see why not. We should not return in September to how it was.
I think you're right, Richard, with the short memories as well, because I look out on the streets. I've been in London for the past 3 or 4 days working, and the streets are getting busier for sure. There are less people who feel like they're worried about the COVID impact. To say it, there's less people walking around with masks on. There's more people in shops. The sandwich shops are starting to fill up a little bit more. And I guess I feel it'll be very quick once people jump back in to forget perhaps where we were last year, and in the hope that actually it doesn't really return too badly. I think from my side of things, a lot of my clients are very worried that this is going to be a seasonal thing. And we'll be unlocked every summer for the next couple of years. And there'll be some kind of restrictions put in place over winter, in the winter months, while we learn to cope with various strains that may or may not come back. And that's probably the only road people are looking down now, is the what ifs. We should have learnt from the last year that we don't really know what's going on. And should it come back, we should be prepared.
Yeah. Well, look, now we're in May 2021. And I can tell you that from my perspective, the inquiry levels are almost back to pre-COVID levels, and that's very encouraging. People are definitely feeling more confident. Obviously, the vaccines have gone very well in this country, and people want to get back to work. And I am seeing a lot of inquiries for central London. We are seeing a lot more inquiries and transactions, and we needed to, because we did have pretty much 12 months of no transactions and a very, very challenging period for everybody, all the staff and myself.
I just want to say that you've set up in the last 12 months very high standard for yourself when it comes to finding an office space for YouGov, for myself. So with your increased client base,
yes,
I've got those standards that you need to keep up to, you need to stand up to. Going
I'm taking
forward.
the foot off the gas there, Richard.
No, well, I mean,
But I trust this is going to go well.
Yes, I mean that's what I loved about dealing with YouGov and working with Ola, because when I explained to her our actual abilities and capabilities, global reach, negotiating and everything like that, Ola immediately embraced it, took it upon herself to say, right, let's see what you're about, and let's see if you can actually, put your
deliver.
And I really just enjoyed the experience. I really enjoyed I like to negotiate. I actually, as it happens, the fee that we're paid not by the client, by the serviced office provider, the better deal I do for the client, i.e. Ola, at YouGov, the lower our fee. But I don't care. What matters to me is doing a good job for the client, getting repeat business, and just going the extra mile. And one of the examples of the extra mile, which Ola alluded to before, was also, we're not lawyers, but the license agreements that come through, most people would just say, here's the license agreement, let me know when it's signed. But I actually went through all the clauses and negotiated some of them out that we both agreed, were a bit onerous. And yes, like I say, I'm not a solicitor, but it definitely made it a bit easier for Ola's in-house legal team.
But this is definitely what I do. So it was really good for me to know that I'm working with a partner that can do that. The small print is very important for them to make sure that I get the best deal, not necessarily commercial money-wise.
And with that, it looks like we're just about out of time
finished
for
yet,
this
Gavin.
week's episode.
What's going on? Is that the end again? Why did it all... Time
I
flies when
was
you're having fun.
finishing off beautifully there.
No, we're rolling with this.
Carry on.
I was going to say time flies when you're having fun. But we have run out of time. And Ola, it was a real pleasure to have you in the studio and talking about all things flex, but also other important issues that we've addressed that I'm sure the viewers will find very interesting. I certainly did.
I did
and
too.
Gavin, once again, fantastic moderating and keeping me in check.
Absolute pleasure. Ola, it was really interesting actually hearing your story, and I wish you the best of luck. Now you are actually going to be back in an office.
I am.
Along with all these staff that you're placing around the world, so best of luck with that. Please join us next time for the Office Freedom podcast, Flex with Richard Smith.